This is the second session in a series of 10 workshops planned on this on emotional intelligence based on this best-selling book by Daniel Goleman. And today we have some guests, and also to refresh our minds, let's do a quick recap. Importance of emotional intelligence, we have to let us first understand it. First is that our education system currently it is mostly focused on intelligence quotient. Intelligence quotient determines a person's capability to solve puzzles or in word comprehensions and all. But studies have shown that the effect of intelligence quotient in determining a person's success in life is about 20% only. It doesn't mean that IQ or education is unimportant. It is not so. IQ and education is very important in that it has got a floor effect. It is very essential for someone to have a threshold level of IQ or a qualifying level of education in order to get entry into a field. In order to get a job, we need to have a level of education or some intelligence level. But thereafter, once we get started in a field, whether it be in business or in a job or in a profession, whatever, 80% of the success thereafter is determined by emotional intelligence. This has come out of studies called competency mapping. Human beings are emotional beings, but until recently, the best model science had to put together for humans as like computers or rational machines. That is no way to accurately represent humans. We are emotional, but science had no way to understand it really until the second half of 20th century. But in about 1970 or so, MRI scans and that kind of scientific advancements came, and that gave a better picture as to how emotions get triggered and how that determines our decisions and reactions. By 1995, Daniel Goleman was kind of able to put together all those scientific insights into emotions, and he published this book in 1995. And with that, it became so popular. And thanks to that, most of us today have heard about emotional intelligence. But in order to get an in-depth understanding and to practically enhance emotional intelligence, that kind of programs, it is not very common. And here, this is a humble attempt to go through the pages of this book and try to understand this in depth and try to practically bring the emotional intelligence in our lives. And before we get into the program structure, let me make a caveat. Thing is that I'm not an expert in emotional intelligence. I'm not an expert in psychology even. So please don't take whatever I say in this workshop as the last word in emotional intelligence. Please try to explore from outside sources and try to understand it better. And please, we can do the discussions as well. Because of the time limitation, we have a question and answer session towards the end. So unless if there is something very serious, you can raise that question in between if there is a very serious question. Otherwise, let us keep the questions for the Q&A session. And today we will go through the part one, that is emotional brain. This is about the neuroanatomical structure of the brain. And before we get into that content, first of all, let us try to understand why should there be emotions? What are they for? To do that, let us do a thought experiment. Can you all see the screen now? I want you all to take a look at the screen. Hello, are you seeing a picture now?
Yeah, we can see the picture.
Yes. Okay, this is a picture of the African Kalahari Desert. I want you to register this image in your mind. We know human beings first originated on Earth in Africa. And this is a desert in Africa. Even though it's a desert, there are some trees and bushes around. Imagine that you are a prehistoric human being, and the time is about 100,000 years ago. You are a hunter-gatherer, cave-dwelling human being standing in the middle of this desert. Can you imagine that? Okay. After imagining, I want you all to close your eyes. Okay, keep this image in your mind and close your eyes. I can see you, all of you, close your eyes. Okay, so you are a prehistoric hunter-gatherer human being. You are standing in the middle of the African Kalahari Desert. And now open your eyes and look at the screen. What sort of an emotional reaction would that prehistoric human being experience when opening his or her eyes and seeing this kind of a fearsome predator in front? It is nothing but fear. And what happens when we experience fear? There is a momentary freeze of the body. That is to avoid detection by the predator. And next, blood will float from the face. There will be a blanched appearance. There will be increased blood flow to the legs. What is the importance of this increased blood flow to legs? Who is the fastest human being? Who holds the Olympic record for running? Usain Bolt. But I bet many of us sitting in this audience today will beat Usain Bolt in running if you are being chased by a dog. That is the significance of this increase in blood flow. For sure, fear is a survival mechanism that nature has given to animals. When we are afraid, we are able to run faster. Similar explanation we can see for other types of emotions as well. When we are angry, heartbeat increase. There is increased blood flow to the hands that makes it possible for us to land a perfect blow on the face of the enemy. In surprise, the eyebrows lift up, making it possible to get a clearer and better view of the intriguing thing that has happened. Discuss, this is the universal expression. It looks like the person is trying to prevent an obnoxious smell from entering the nostrils or to spit out something poisonous food. And in sadness, there is a drop in energy. A child, imagine a child who lost his or her parent, the child will lack energy that will keep it in the safety of the dwelling. So emotions are survival mechanism that nature has granted to animals. But where do emotions reside? We know our thinking and intelligence reside in our brain. But where exactly our feelings and emotions come? Do we have a second mind for emotions? Do we indeed have two minds? One, a thinking and logical, intelligent mind, and second, a feeling and emotional mind. You would have seen this kind of a scene in South Indian marriages. It will be a very rich, colorful, extravagant affair, so much happiness and celebration, but towards the end of it, the bride and her relatives will cry. In most marriages it happens, in some marriages it doesn't happen nowadays, but are they happy or sad? Definitely rational, in their rational mind they are happy. They have arranged it so exquisitely, they have made it so well, so much in a celebratory mode, and forever in life they are going to remember it as a subliminally happy moment in their lives. Then how can they cry at that moment? Are they happy, or is there something irrational in those tears? The best explanation, I think, is that emotionally they are apprehensive because that girl is going to a house which she is unfamiliar of. Maybe she will be uncomfortable with the people and the customs there. Perhaps that explains the tears. That shows there are kind of two minds. One is the thinking, planning mind, and second is the emotional mind. Traditionally, we associate emotional mind with the heart. Even in Toastmasters, we say the speaker has to attain emotional connect. For that reason, he should speak from the heart. He or she should speak from the heart. And there are certain cultures which associate emotions and feelings to the liver. Do you know any such culture? In my mother tongue Malayalam, the most romantic way to address a lover or a spouse is to say "Ente Karale." That is associating emotion, love, with liver. But is it in the liver or in the heart the emotions reside? Advanced brain imaging techniques show that it is in the brain itself our emotions reside. And there's a very interesting theory about it that's called the triune theory of brain. And in a nutshell, what the theory says is that the human brain among all animal brains is the most well developed. As animals developed, their brains started evolving small first, and then slightly larger, then more larger, and finally culminating in the most well developed human brain. We will go through that in detail. We know life first originated on Earth in water about 3.7 billion years ago as nucleic acid. After that, about 800 million years ago, animals appeared in water first. Then about 350 million years ago, amphibians came. Then about 300 million years ago, reptilians came. Dinosaurs are reptilians. They lay eggs and hatch. And after that, the next ones to come was the mammalians, like dogs, cows and all, which give birth to their children and nurse their children, take care of their children. And that those animals came about 200 million years ago. After that appeared our close cousins, the chimpanzees, the monkeys and the apes, the primates. It was about 50 million years ago. And then very recently, about 200,000 million years ago, or 0.2 million years ago, appeared the first human being in Africa. And brain development follows this same similar timeline. That's what this triune theory of brain says. But one caveat here also, this many people say that this theory is already debunked, but it's a very compelling theory to understand. Let us go through that. It is given in this book as well. What this theory says is that in the human brain, the basal part, called the basal ganglia, that consists of our brainstem and cerebellum, this is the reptilian brain. What it means is, in the reptile, if you take a reptilian, their entire brain will consist of parts which are similar to only this portion of the human brain. And this portion of the human brain, that's called the reptilian brain, it is supposed to be responsible for the fight or flight response. Half jokingly, it is said that the reptilian brain is responsible for the 4 F's. That is fight, flight, feed, and reproduction. Take the case of a snake. The snake does not display happiness or ecstasy. It shows anger, fear, and more than that, what it knows is to eat and reproduce. So the reptilian brain takes care of the essential survival functions only. And then what came? It was the mammals. And the mammal's brain consists of these parts as well on top of the reptilian brain. And this part consists of parts like hippocampus, thalamus, hypothalamus, and amygdala. We will discuss a lot about amygdala in today's session. So all these parts together, that is called the limbic system. And the limbic system is supposed to be responsible for emotions. Because the mammals, they give birth to their young ones and they nurse and take care of the young ones. So they are emotionally connected. For that reason, unlike reptiles, mammals are capable of displaying and demonstrating emotions. If you take a look at a dog, that dog is very able to clearly display happiness on seeing its master. So it's the mammal brain that evolved about 200 million years ago that is supposed to be responsible for feelings and emotions. And after that came primates. And primates, they had on top of this mammal brain, they had these structures called the neocortex. Neocortex is supposed to be the seat of intelligence and also dexterity. Our close cousins, primates and monkeys, they are more intelligent than all other types of animals that came before them. And then we people came, that is human beings, we came about 200,000 years ago. What we got extra to all other animals ahead of us is this portion that's called the prefrontal cortex. This prefrontal cortex is supposed to be the seat of all our advanced intelligence, our planning, our science, our culture, all of those. It is it is because of this prefrontal cortex we have gone to space, we have harnessed nuclear energy, we got internet, and all of us today agree 100% without an iota of doubt that the crowning glory of human civilization, the culmination of all our achievements, of all the human civilization so far in history, is nothing but Toastmasters meetings, of that Periyar Toastmasters meeting in particular, and that is the result of well-developed prefrontal cortex in our brains. That is the different structures of the brain, which are as given by the triune brain theory. And there we said amygdala, which is part of the limbic system or the mammal brain, that plays a very important role in our story today. Thing is that the amygdala is almond nut sized structures in the brain. There are two of it, one of it on each hemisphere, and people whose amygdala is damaged or destroyed, they do not display emotions at all. In one young man, his amygdala was removed. He lost all interest in people. He was capable of very intelligent conversation, but he no longer recognized or had any emotional connect with his friends or even own mother. Rats who have their amygdala removed, they lack fear and they go on and attack even cats and get promptly killed, because with the loss of amygdala, they lost that survival instinct of fear that nature had granted them. Amygdala, being part of the limbic system of the brain that evolved 200 million years ago, since it is very ancient, it is so well connected to all other parts of the brain. What it means is that at times of crisis, this amygdala can take control of all other parts of the brain. It means in moments of crisis, amygdala can shut down the most advanced supercomputer that we have in our head, that is our prefrontal cortex. The amygdala, if it is excited, it will shut down the blood flow even to the prefrontal cortex, and our actions will be entirely dictated by this animal brain that evolved about 200 million years ago. The latest, the most modern equipment that we have, that we got only 200,000 years ago, that will be rendered useless at moments of crisis by this animal brain. And that is called an amygdala hijack. Have you experienced amygdala hijack? I have. And I am sure one way or the other, all of us would have at least got some inkling of it. I have a friend who got angry over phone conversation, and he threw his phone into a railway track and lost his phone. And after that, he regretted it. He said, I don't know what came over me, I just did it. And there is a case of a famous cricketer in Kerala who got banned from cricket for many years. And in his diaries, he has written, he needs to control his anger. He just, tragically or unfortunately, he was not able to control his anger. And this is very familiar to many couples who engage in very kind of intense physical arguments. And they later say, I don't know, I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have broken that utensil on his face. I don't know, I regret it. That many people say. And how it actually happens, this is what the brain imaging techniques have shown, is that in our brain, there is a part called thalamus. The role of thalamus is like that of an air traffic controller. So all the cues that comes from our senses, like eyes, ears, tongue and all, first all those signals will travel to thalamus. Thalamus will sort those signals and send them to the respective places which are specialized in the brain to process that kind of signals. So when we first see the animation of a tiger in front of our eyes, that visual signal will travel from the eyes to thalamus. And thalamus will sort that, identify it's a visual cue, so it will send it to the visual cortex. And the visual cortex, it will analyze the signal and come out with a proposal and say that this is an animation of a tiger, and it will give that information to amygdala. This whole circuit will take about half a second, about 400 milliseconds or so. But there is another weak circuit that travels directly from thalamus to amygdala. Thing is, this is faster. The signal from thalamus will reach amygdala faster in about 10 seconds, but it's a very weak signal. It will not be very clear. So the amygdala will get a sense of what is there in front of its eyes quickly. And if it looks something like threatening, since this is a survival mechanism, amygdala will go into kind of an excited mode. And this excitation or the shock will happen within about 10 milliseconds. So when we first see the image of a tiger, initially there may be a shock. That is this first reaction from the amygdala. And then this slowly the clarity will emerge through the visual cortex, and amygdala will come to know that it is just an animation, it's not a tiger. Then we will come back to our senses. This is how it normally happens. But if indeed it was a tiger, then from the visual cortex, the signal will come, it is really a tiger, there is a real danger. Then the amygdala will trigger hormones all over the body like norepinephrine, dopamine and all. What it will do is it will excite the lungs, it will excite the heart, it will suppress digestion, it will suppress urination. Because when we get too angry, I don't think anybody experienced an urge to urinate at the time. It will be suppressed by the amygdala. And the trigger reaction will happen. But in certain people, if their excitation threshold is low, or if the situation is so tense, maybe in the first moment itself, when the amygdala, the faint signal coming from the thalamus indicates a danger, there itself the amygdala will get into that full excitation mode. At that time, our blood flow, breathing, circulatory system, everything will get changed, and even the prefrontal blood flow to the prefrontal cortex will be shut down. And that person will lose working memory of what actually is happening there, what actually he is doing. And many people have committed even violent crimes in this kind of excited moments, and they live to regret it later. This is the mechanism of amygdala hijack. With that, we have come to the end of the material for presentation today. One thing here is that this part of this book is supposed to be not very useful, because the most stupid, most dangerous and most expensive way to enhance emotional intelligence is to undergo a brain surgery. It is not advised. Therefore, the author says, if you are not very interested in this neuroanatomical structure, just skip this part altogether. But we are in no hurry, we have time. That's the reason we have gone through that as well. In the next session, we will go through the nature of emotional intelligence. There will be some very good practical tips as to how to rein in emotional impulses, read someone else's feelings, and also to handle relationships that we will take up in the next session. It's now time for